In December 1941, the German army's ambitious Operation Typhoon, aimed at capturing Moscow, collapsed under the combined weight of determined Soviet resistance and one of the harshest Russian winters in memory. German forces, exhausted and ill-prepared for extreme cold, suffered catastrophic losses from frostbite, exposure, and mechanical failure. Weapons froze, vehicles became inoperable, and thousands of horses perished. When the Red Army launched a massive counteroffensive on December 5–6, the once invincible Wehrmacht was forced into retreat from the outskirts of Moscow. The retreat was often chaotic and brutal. German rear guards were ordered to leave nothing behind, resulting in the systematic destruction of villages that had previously sheltered German troops. This scorched earth withdrawal proved tragic for local civilians, many of whom had initially welcomed the Germans as liberators from Soviet rule. By mid-December, German formations, including the 2nd SS Motorized Division Das Reich, were pulling back dozens of miles westward, abandoning hard-won ground and facing the grim prospect of a collapse reminiscent of Napoleon's retreat from Russia. Despite desperate circumstances, German command sought to stabilize the front. Defensive strongpoints, known as hedgehogs, were established around key towns and railways, while panzer divisions acted as mobile reserves to seal Soviet breakthroughs. Nevertheless, Stalin, sensing opportunity, ordered a vast general winter offensive along the entire Eastern Front. The primary blow was directed at Army Group Center, whose flanks were to be split apart, encircled near Vyazma, and annihilated. On the northern flank, Soviet forces under General Ivan Konev broke through German lines west of Rzhev, threatening to sever vital rail connections and isolate the German Ninth Army. The situation was dire until the arrival of General Walther Model, newly appointed commander of Ninth Army. Energetic, relentless, and personally courageous, Model revitalized demoralized troops through constant frontline presence and decisive action. He managed to close the dangerous gap between German corps and temporarily restore cohesion, though the strategic danger remained acute. Behind German lines, Soviet armies continued to push toward Vyazma, hoping to link up with other advancing forces. To counter this threat, German units, including Das Reich and several panzer and infantry divisions, launched counterattacks designed to encircle Soviet forces in a vast cauldron west of Sychevka. Simultaneously, Soviet formations sought to break through German defenses near the Volga River to relieve their trapped comrades. A critical sector of this battle fell to the SS Regiment der Führer, DF, commanded by Otto Kuhm. Reduced from several thousand men to barely 650, the regiment was ordered to hold its positions at all costs along a narrow front bisected by the frozen Volga. Villages, woods, and river crossings became focal points of savage fighting as DF attempted to block the advance of the Soviet 30th Army, which was preparing a massive relief effort involving multiple rifle divisions and tank brigades. From late January into February 1942, DF endured relentless assaults. Soviet infantry and armor attacked day and night through snowstorms and temperatures plunging below 40 degrees Celsius. Fighting was often at close quarters, with grenades, pistols, and hand-to-hand combat determining survival. Villages repeatedly changed hands, their buildings shattered by artillery and tank fire. Possession of shelter was often the difference between life and death, as exposure alone could cripple or kill soldiers overnight. The extreme winter conditions shaped the battlefield. Deep snow reduced the effectiveness of artillery and explosives. Mines sometimes failed to detonate, and vehicles became immobilized. German anti-tank weapons struggled against the heavily armored T-34 tanks, forcing defenders to rely increasingly on mines, Molotov cocktails, and assault guns when available. Losses mounted rapidly on both sides, and entire companies were reduced to a few dozen men. Despite heroic resistance, German defenses cracked in several places. Soviet tanks smashed through positions, annihilating machine gun nests and foxholes at point-blank range. In one instance, a lone survivor staggered back from a destroyed company, reporting that all others were dead. Gaps opened in the German front, hastily filled by cooks, drivers, and clerks pressed into combat roles, often with disastrous results. The situation stabilized intermittently with the arrival of reinforcements, including assault guns and reconnaissance units under capable leaders such as Major Mummert. Counterattacks restored some positions, and German assault guns destroyed dozens of Soviet tanks in fierce duels. Yet mechanical breakdowns, ammunition shortages, and sheer exhaustion plagued German efforts. Villages like Klepanino, Solomino, and Lebsino became killing grounds, changing hands multiple times amid appalling casualties. As the battle raged, Soviet forces showed extraordinary determination, launching repeated attacks despite heavy losses. Entire divisions were committed piecemeal, often without coordination, leading to staggering casualties, but relentless pressure on German lines. Air supply missions supported encircled Soviet troops, while Soviet bombers and artillery pounded German positions in near-constant barrages. By mid-February, the struggle reached its climax. Soviet forces made desperate final efforts to break through German defenses and save the trapped armies to the south. At the same time, German command intensified operations to eliminate the cauldron. Air attacks, artillery barrages, and concentrated counterattacks gradually crushed the encircled Soviet formations. On February 17th, news reached Otto Kumm that the Soviet forces in the Sychevka cauldron had been destroyed. Orders followed for Das Reich to be withdrawn from the line. Almost immediately, Soviet attacks in the sector diminished, signaling the end of the battle's most intense phase. The cost was enormous. Soviet losses were catastrophic, tens of thousands killed or captured, hundreds of tanks and guns destroyed, and multiple divisions shattered. German losses, though smaller, were still severe. Elite formations like Der Führer were reduced to mere handfuls of survivors, with some regiments able to muster only a few dozen men at the end of the fighting. German commanders praised the defensive stand as heroic, crediting the cooperation of infantry, artillery, assault gun units, and reconnaissance formations. Decorations were awarded to several commanders for leadership under extreme conditions. General Model, whose reputation was cemented during the battle, credited his soldiers with saving 9th Army and stabilizing Army Group Center at a critical moment. Despite these defensive successes, the broader strategic reality remained grim for Germany. Moscow had not fallen, and the Soviet Union had demonstrated both resilience and growing operational capacity. Soviet leaders later acknowledged that they had overestimated their ability to achieve decisive victory during the winter offensive, underestimating German defensive strength and recovery. The battle around Rzhev and the Volga stands as one of the most brutal episodes of the Eastern Front, a grinding winter struggle marked by relentless attacks, appalling losses, and extraordinary endurance on both sides. It delayed Soviet plans, preserved German positions for the time being, and ensured that the war in the East would continue with even greater ferocity. Ultimately, however, it did not alter the long-term trajectory of the conflict, which would grind on inexorably toward total defeat for Nazi Germany.